Now, most people think Denver's wealthiest live in these massive new mansions out in like Cherry Hills or Castle Rock, but the real old money, they're in 5 historic neighborhoods that have really quietly held Denver's generational wealth for pretty much over a century. Now, these aren't the flashy millionaire estates you see like on Instagram or TikTok. I'm talking about neighborhoods where family wealth has been there since the 1920s. Let's go ahead and dive in. All right, so what does old money even mean in Denver? It's not about the biggest house or the newest Tesla out in the driveway. Old money here is about multi-generational ownership. We're talking families who have held the same property since like the 1920s, passing estates down through 3, 4, sometimes even 5 generations. It's about that historic architecture, the stunning Tudor revival and those colonial homes designed by, some of Denver's most famous architects back when, craftsmanship really meant something. Now, here's what sets these neighborhoods apart from everywhere else. Price stability. Now, while the rest of Denver's market swings with tech booms and economic cycles, now these areas hold value really through everything. Now, the telltale sign of true old money, turnover. In areas like Country Club, you might only see 1 or 2 homes come to market per year. That's it. Families just don't sell, they inherit. Now, before we get to Country Club, I have to mention Cherry Hills Village. That's where this old money philosophy meets the modern celebrity wealth. Now, what Russell Wilson paid originally for his property, that's gonna put everything really into perspective. Now I'm gonna get to that in just a few minutes. But first, let me start with Country Club. There's a reason it's considered Denver's undisputed #1. Now, Country Club is all about the quiet, tree-lined streets, these grand historic homes, and pretty much total exclusivity. This is the ultra-quiet luxury where privacy matters more than being seen. Now, the area has this kind of park-like atmosphere that was intentionally designed over a century ago and has maintained that same character really ever since. Walking through here feels like stepping back in time. You're surrounded by architectural masterpieces from the early 1900s. You'll see mature landscaping everywhere, the sense that nothing has changed in decades, because honestly, it really hasn't. Properties here rarely come to market. You might see a few listings per year. That is it. The median sale price sits at a little over 1.8 million. And that median doesn't even tell the full story. The high-end properties here trade in a completely different range. We're talking stuff $4 million to $9 million for the real estates that define this neighborhood. Now check this out. One recent listing at 181 Race Street came to market just under $9 million. Had 6 bedrooms, 9 bathrooms, almost 12,000 square feet, sat on about 1/3 of an acre. Now that's a scale we're dealing with here in the heart of Country Club. Now, Country Club's history goes back to the early 1900s. It was developed jointly by Denver Country Club and the 4th Avenue Realty Company. They created these curving parkways and picturesque home sites that still define the area today. Now, something really cool, this neighborhood is actually listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Out there, you're gonna see grand colonial revival and some Tudor revival homes designed by some major prominent Denver architects. But here's what makes this truly old money, the ownership pattern. These are long-term Denver families with names on buildings downtown. Properties stay in these families for generations. When something does come to market, it's often because that last family member, either passed away or moved to assisted living. Now, the buyers coming into Country Club fall into a couple specific categories. You've got executives with established wealth who understand what this address represents. And then you've got legacy buyers whose families have been in Denver for generations. These are the people who grew up knowing Country Club as that pinnacle address. And you got wealthy transplants who really have done their homework. They recognize that this neighborhood has something that new construction simply can't replicate, and that's history. architectural significance, social capital. Now, these aren't tech boom millionaires looking for the flashiest new build. These are people who really value heritage. They want their children to grow up in homes with stories. They see real estate as a, multi-generational investment. Now, this mindset becomes even more pronounced when we look at huge sprawling estates. Now, let me pause here for just a quick second. I'm Gary Bradler, and I've spent over a decade helping buyers navigate these exact neighborhoods. So if you're seriously considering Country Club, Cherry Hills, or any of the areas I'm breaking down today, feel free to reach out. My contact info is in that description below. Now let's head to Belcaro and Polo Club. Belcaro and Polo Club are where Denver's quiet, mega wealthy live. We're talking these large ranch-style homes on spacious lots, many which have been updated and expanded over the years. Now, this neighborhood has more breathing room, more distance between all the homes, this sense that you're in a private enclave despite being within, of course, Denver city limits. Now, the Polo Club area takes this even further. These are multi-acre gated estates, the kind of properties where privacy just isn't preferred, it's guaranteed by the sheer geography of it. You can't see any of your neighbors from any window. And that's not a luxury feature here, that's the minimum standard. All right, the median sale price in Belcaro was about 1.1 million most recently, but don't let that number fool you. The true Polo Club estates trade in a completely different stratosphere. We're seeing properties up to $10 million for updated mansions in the Polo Club enclave. Here's an example, 27 Polo Club Circle, about 7,300 square feet with 5 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, selling for $6.5 million. Now, these are gated properties on multiple acres, the kind of estates that families really hold on to for generations. Now, the centerpiece of Belcaro's history is the Phipps Mansion. It was built between 1931 and 1933 for Lawrence Phipps, a former US Senator and Vice President of Carnegie Steel. His wife Margaret named the estate Belcaro, which means beautiful dear one in Italian. That mansion and the surrounding grounds have become the foundation for this entire neighborhood of estates. Now, the Polo Club area developed around the original Denver Polo Club. Now, this wasn't accidental. These neighborhoods were intentionally created for Denver's highest society, people who, of course, played polo, who entertained on, of course, that grand scale. What makes this truly old money is the generational continuity. These properties typically stay in families for like decades. The Phipps family influence still really shapes the area's character up till today. Now, Belcaro and Polo Club attract a specific type of wealth. These are your old guard Denver families with inherited properties. People who value land and privacy above everything else. You'll find like successful business owners who have built wealth over decades, professionals from established Denver industries, families who prioritize discretion over that visibility. The buyers coming here now aren't looking for a trendy address or a statement property. They want acreage, they want gates, they want the kind of privacy that only multi-acre estates can provide. Now, when we get to the Hilltop area later, you'll see how this same old guard prestige plays out at a completely different price point. The accessibility comparison also is going to surprise you. But privacy takes on a different dimension entirely when you combine it with celebrity status. And that's exactly what we're seeing in our next area. Let's talk about Cherry Hills Village. All right, Cherry Hills Village is where legacy wealth meets modern celebrity money. And Russell Wilson's $25 million purchase here wasn't an outlier. It was a statement about where today's biggest profile buyers choose to plant roots alongside, some of Denver's oldest wealth. Now, the village is known for its rolling hills, mature trees, this great network of trails that they got for walking, biking, even horseback riding. You know, you've got horse estates with private facilities, country club living. You know, properties on minimum 1-acre lots. It creates this just spacious setting. Now, what makes Cherry Hills really unique, despite the rural feel, you're just a quick, short drive from downtown or, you know, the Denver Tech Center. You can have horses and acreage, but you're not stuck in the mountains far from urban amenities. It really is like the best of both worlds. Now, the median price sits about $3.4 million, but the high-end properties go way beyond that. We're seeing listings in the 20 million plus range. Now, so check this one out. One at Lynn Road is currently listed at 22 million, 7 bedrooms, 12 bathrooms, 23,000 square feet. Now, that's a level we're talking about in Cherry Hills Village, but there's a place that costs a fraction of this, but represents something Cherry Hills Village can never buy. And I'll tell you all about it in just a bit. Now, first, let me explain why Cherry Hills Village is old money. The area was incorporated way back in the 40s, but its development really took off with the founding of the Cherry Hills Country Club in the 1920s. The area was conceived from the beginning as a community of country estates, you know, large lots, rural atmosphere. That was the vision they had. Now, the city has maintained that character through some real strict zoning, and most of the city requires, you know, a minimum lot size of at least 1 acre. Now, that regulation alone ensures the area can't be subdivided or densified. You know, what you see today is fundamentally what will exist for generations to come. Now, the Cherry Hills Country Club itself is world renowned. I'm sure you've probably even heard of it. It's hosted 3 U.S. championship opens in 38, 60, and 1978. 2 PGA championships in 41 and 85. Now, being a member here isn't just about golf. It's about being part of, you know, Denver's absolute highest tier of society. Now, Cherry Hills Village attracts a kind of fascinating mix of people. You've got old Denver money from timber, shipping, and early commerce, families who've been here since, you know, the village was incorporated. Then you got CEOs and executives from energy, finance, and other established industries who really wanted that prestige and that space you get. But you also got professional athletes and the high-profile individuals who need privacy and can afford the absolute best. Now, the Russell Wilson purchase put a spotlight on Cherry Hills Village as a real celebrity destination. These buyers want acreage for security, you know, top tier schools in the Cherry Creek School District, and an address that signals that they have arrived. The combination of legacy residents and these modern celebrity residents creates this interesting dynamic. Old and new wealth living, you know, side by side, both here drawn by the same things. You know, the space, the exclusivity, the best of what Denver has. Now, Crestmoor, which I'm covering in a few minutes, costs a fraction of what you'll pay in Cherry Hills, but it represents something Cherry Hills can never buy: complete anonymity, multi-generational continuity that's been undisturbed for 70 years. I'll get to that soon. But first, that same exclusivity exists back within Denver proper, just with a completely different expression. Let's head to Hilltop. Now, Hilltop has something Cherry Hills Village can't match. Those sweeping Rocky Mountain views that longtime Denver families have prized since the 1940s. Now, the neighborhood had this settled residential atmosphere with a strong sense of community. You'll see a mix of Tudor colonial revival and mid-century modern ranch homes out here. All custom properties with, you know, established landscaping, these great mature trees. The area is almost entirely residential with minimal commercial development, which is nice. That's what gives it that quiet, peaceful environment. It's the kind of neighborhood where families know each other, where kids grow up playing in the same parks that their parents did, where there's genuine pride in maintaining the area's historic character. Now, the median sale price in Hilltop, I was looking it up, sits at $1.9 million, but we're also seeing listings in that $4 to $6 million range for high-end properties. And I have some current examples I wanted to share. There's a listing at $4.4 million, one at $4.7 million, and one at $6.1 million. And these are typically 6 to 8 bedrooms, 5 to 8,000 square feet. Now, compared to Cherry Hills, where we just looked at a $22 million listing, Hilltop gives you that same Denver prestige at, a completely different price point. Development in Hilltop began in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. Now, the area was annexed by Denver in the late 1800s, and early zoning laws designated it as an almost entirely residential area. And that decision shaped the neighborhood's character for the next century plus. Now, what makes Hilltop old money is, of course, the long-term ownership, the generational nature of the community. These are families who have been here, of course, for decades, who raised multiple generations in the same homes, who see themselves as, you'd say, maybe stewards of Denver's history. Now, the neighborhood is anchored by Crestmoor Park. It's famous for its large sundial and, panoramic views of the Front Range. There's also Grayland Country Day School, which is a private, kindergarten through 8th grade school that has helped serve Hilltop's families, across generations. Now, Hilltop attracts, established families and professionals alike who've built their wealth over decades. These are buyers who want classic Denver architecture and that neighborhood feel. You're gonna find doctors, lawyers, business owners, executives, people who've been successful but don't need to prove it with the most expensive address. Many buyers have had family connections to the neighborhood. They grew up in Hilltop or their parents lived here. Now they're coming back to raise their children in that same environment they grew up in. This is old Denver prestige without the extreme exclusivity of like country club, but it still represents generational level wealth and long-term commitment to the community. Now, that same commitment to continuity defines our final neighborhood, but Crestmoor takes it even further with an approach that's quieter than anything we've covered so far. Now, Crestmoor is where Denver's quiet money lives. Meeting residents whose grandparents bought their first property in the 1950s isn't unusual here. It's pretty much the norm. Now, the neighborhood has these winding tree-lined streets and large lots. You're gonna see a mix of, Tudor colonial revival and some mid-century ranch architecture out here. I think it feels even more private and residential than Hilltop. Then there's this strong sense of community continuity that you kind of pick up on immediately. Now, what really sets Crestmoor apart is the private neighborhood park memberships. I think that adds another layer of exclusivity. Now, this is a neighborhood where families know each other across decades, where kids grew up together, where there's this genuine community investment that spans generations. Okay, the median listing price sits at about $2.8 million. Crestmoor follows similar patterns to Hilltop, large custom homes on, these great spacious lots. Purely residential character, price points ranging from $1.5 million to $5 million, depending on the specific property and updates. So check this out, we got one to show you. It's a 5-bedroom, 6.5 bath home on just under 8,500 square feet, sold for $4.85 million very recently. And that gives you a sense of what high-end looks like here. Now, Crestmoor developed right alongside Hilltop in the early 1900s, and shares a lot of its historical character. But what makes Crestmoor truly old money, the ownership pattern. Now, these are homes held for multiple generations. It's not uncommon to meet residents whose grandparents bought the property in the 1950s or 60s. Those same families have been here for that 60 or 70 years. Now, the neighborhood benefits from Crestmoor Park. It's got these great playgrounds, soccer fields, tennis courts, and softball facilities for residents. There's also the Crestmoor Swimming and Tennis Club, which is a private membership organization capped at only 350 families, keeps it exclusive. And that cap has been in place for decades. You don't just buy your way in, you have to wait for a spot to open up. And this combination of public amenities and private memberships, I think, creates an incredible sense of continuity. You simply don't find this in newer neighborhoods. Now, Crestmoor attracts longtime Denver families, professionals who value stability and discretion, buyers who prioritize, some neighborhood character over trendiness, maybe. These are people who could live anywhere but choose Crestmoor for its understated elegance and strong community bonds, I would say. You'll find families who've inherited properties and choose to stay. Professionals in their 40s and 50s who've built wealth quietly and want a neighborhood that reflects that sensibility. Now, buyers who specifically seek out areas where the focus is more on community rather than status. Now, this isn't the neighborhood for people who need to be seen. This is for people who've already achieved success and want to live somewhere that values privacy, continuity, and some general connection. That's what quiet money looks like in Denver. So there you have it, the 5 neighborhoods where Denver's old money actually lives. Now, if you're seriously considering one of these neighborhoods, or even if you want to explore Denver's luxury market and just understand how to access these properties, shoot me an email at info@hometowndenver.co, and we can talk about your specific situation. Now, old money tells you where Denver's been, but the booming suburbs show you where Denver's actually heading. I'm gonna break down the 5 suburbs where families, jobs, and big money are moving right now, and which ones could be your smartest investment in 2026. The link is right here. So until next time, I will see you around Denver.